Good morning. Right now it's 11:15 in the morning, and I've had a chance to review some of the litigation that I'm a part of, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. But one thing that I must say is that I want to go on the record and create one clear, concise disclaimer. And that is that no videos that I create are designed or ever alluding to any direct or indirect communication with anyone should they have any court order or anything designed for me not to communicate with them. Meaning that I lived for the last 26 years being with someone. It is virtually impossible to talk about my life without a reference to that person. That is not me directly speaking to them in any way whatsoever. Furthermore, I have children with a certain person. When I speak about my children or anything of that matter, that is my First Amendment constitutional right. I am also protected under the Whistleblower Act and a series of other things that really, I would not advise anyone to go against those, because my intentions are not only pure, I am literally saying right now that I do not want anyone to ever disseminate this content to my ex-wife. I do not want to disseminate this content to anyone that is offended by it. I am pleading with everyone to understand that I was already thrown into jail for 7 days for something I did not do, all because out of the thousands of hours of content, a few words were taken not only out of context, but also proved my entire case by stating that I am the victim of being stalked rather than the legitimacy of the court process, which I've turned to for protection. In all of this, I want to once again state that at no time are any of these videos directly or indirectly my attempt to communicate with anyone that I'm not supposed to be communicating with. This is not okay to point a finger at me and say, well, he mentioned his kids, he's talking to his children. If I ever mention my children, that is for them to watch in the future. I have stated this hundreds of times already on this channel. To ignore this and state, hey, this is him speaking to his kids, is not okay. Even though I speak to them as if they're children and adults at the same time, because the way I communicate with my children will not change. I want to be direct, I want to be honest, I want to be sincere, I want to be kind, I want to be everything that I've always wanted to have in a parent. That's the way I parent, is that I have an amazing memory from when I was a child. I remember very clearly the children that had really clear and healthy childhoods, and it stemmed from really healthy parents. And the healthiness of the parents really stemmed from stability, clarity, lack of substance abuse, as well as a good moral compass that was geared towards the happiness of not just their children, but the children in their children's lives, to set a really good example for those kids. And that's the kind of parent that I want to be. Nowhere in that script does that allow me to insult or put down the people that are a part of my children's lives. That is something that I choose to do and take the high road, because I've realized that no amount of good that I can possibly do or say will ever amount to the image that I portray on YouTube and my social media accounts, because I've realized that that is far more important to the people that I thought that loved me than the real human being who is absolutely suffering from not seeing his children. This disclaimer is really meant to remind everyone that, once again, I want to state for the record that at no time are any of these videos directly supposed to be watched by any parties that are either offended or choose to utilize this as some sort of a weird, morphed, indirect communication to them. They are not. These videos are nothing more than an expression of my inner monologue, my pain, the truth of what I'm going through, and the difficulties of being left both homeless, having my properties taken from me, as well as being a victim of assault, fraud, and a slew of other crimes that are not yet adjudicated because I have to actually prove that I am a victim of them rather than having them investigated like everybody else has the right. Why? Because the truth is so difficult for the average person to believe that it is far easier to attribute a set of circumstances that never happened to me in order to paint me in a negative light. This disclaimer is truly designed for each and every video done in the past, present, and future that I will ever do. Because at no time am I ever addressing any human beings who I'm not supposed to be addressing, nor do I want anyone to ever address these people on my behalf, nor do I want what is being disseminated publicly as an inspirational message to anyone that is going through extremely difficult times of how to react and act in the most coherent, logical, and legal way. Not to scare people on YouTube and not to threaten litigation. Although, given the set of circumstances that are laid before me, litigation is truly the only means to resolve certain conflicts. And over the last 3 years, I have spent a very large portion of my life not only in litigation, but studying litigation so that I could really present to you a full scope of all the tools that are required for the modern American entrepreneur. Because the reality is that there is no point of creating these businesses if history were to repeat itself. What we experienced over the last week while I was actually in jail, which perhaps could be one of the worst parts of the whole thing, is that my love of snow was tortured and used so horribly against me by having me in a jail cell where I could see the snow piling up. We're in a state of emergency, and this is the second time that this has happened. One time was Hurricane Sandy, and I want to remind everyone that human beings who go through the process that I've went through are left permanently traumatized. This is not to say that I am a PTSD victim, such as human beings that come back from being in foreign wars and experience certain traumas that leave them to be relatively dangerous human beings because they acquired a set of skills and then they can easily haywire at any time, which is why the entire point of the show Jack Reacher is really important, but I don't want to go on a tangent that fast. My name is Daniel M. Reeses. I want to remind everyone that, one, please understand that I cannot say this any louder without disturbing people, and that is, I am not interested in being falsely incarcerated for even a second longer. Please do not misunderstand my message and get it confused for some weird, morphed, subconscious play on a communication format that I'm not allowed to engage in. I cannot speak more genuinely than stating that this is designed for everyone but the people that have filed any form of gag order litigation, invented stories of harassment against me. Those people, I choose to abide by the court's perception of the way things are going and state that I'm not interested in going against law enforcement. I'm not interested in going against the courts. I'm not interested in going against anyone. That is not how humans resolve conflicts. That is how morons get themselves in trouble. Last time I checked, I don't have moron written on my forehead, though I've had asshole removed, and I am also nothing more than a human being with no tattoos whatsoever. So I get to write my own story, guide my own path, and truly be the shepherd of my journey. Because I do not need anyone else to give me any more advice who is not willing to do a single thing about that said advice and assist me in this process. I have a very small group of friends. I love my children more than anything. My story has not changed since the beginning of this entire process, And it is very, 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 very poor decisions that are made in order to openly go on the record and state lies both against myself and people I choose to do business with, all in an effort to discredit the truth that is not only bound to come out, but will also shed a completely different light on the story that has been presented in front of the courts in order to unlawfully remove me from my children's lives and vice versa. I will continue to speak adamantly about the unlawful nature of what has happened, the long-term permanent effects that it will have both on myself and my children, as well as the nature of the millions of other human beings such as myself and obviously Ms. Resnick that have been the victims of circumstances played out by a set of court officers that are truly designed to err on the side of private attorneys and human beings who choose to spend money on perpetrating lies and presenting them to the court, all in an effort to not do what's best for the children's well-being, but to hurt their said partners. And I am curious to see how many cases nationwide this is a fact pattern that continues to replicate itself, because I grew up in a world where I constantly saw parents at the losing end of custody battles, all based on Hollywood circumstances, which means that these types of stories rarely were played out in the real world. In the real world, parents that wanted to be in their children's lives were always in their lives, and even my mother and father, who didn't really get along at all, never had a single custody issue where they needed to go to the courts to resolve their problems. That is a very, very strange set of circumstances when reviewing my life currently versus my past. When I look at my parents and look at them as role models compared to exactly what's going on, that's where I say to everyone, hey, how much more can you as an audience tolerate of this disclaimer while recognizing that what I'm saying is both 100% true, I am clear, coherent, sober, intelligent, and far in excess of the expectations that you had for a human being who just got out of 31 days of incarceration, including the last 7 days, which I just got out a few days ago and I will be able to speak about. Most human beings who suffer the kind of trauma that I've suffered suppress it throughout their entire lives and haven't affected them. Alas, not me. I am able to turn a absolutely horrible set of circumstances into an incredible life lesson, both for myself, the future version of my children, since the subject matter is relatively traumatic, and as well as anyone else who chooses to really be fascinated by the inner workings of the Essex County Correctional Facility, the entire criminal justice system post-arrest, as well as the reality of where we as a society are going in conjunction with the utilization of both artificial intelligence as well as a digital age where fact patterns of criminality, both on law enforcement side and humans that choose to break the law constantly, cannot be ignored any further. And that is why I am not going to just go case by case. What I'm going to do, in case anyone is wondering why I am choosing to film this type of content and deliver my message in a public forum, is that rather than continuously replicating the same set of circumstances and repeating failed fact patterns, what I'm going to be able to do is take a look at my previous caseload, and now that I'm no longer in the trenches of studying law and I'm going to be practicing law, not on behalf of other people, but only on behalf of one client. His name is Daniel M. Reeses. And what you will see is that this disclaimer is going to work its way into a general disclaimer where I very clearly express to everyone that my goal was to legitimately grow a multi-billion-dollar real estate portfolio, my businesses, and not bother a single person. Rather than being allowed to do that, I have virtually caused a stroke to myself, because the reality is that that's not true. The stresses of, if you look at my eyebrow, I somehow have worked into some sort of like The Rock, where I have the people's eyebrow all time raised, and that is not a reactionary response. That is just something that happens when the camera turns on, and I hope that I'm able to lower it somehow But in reality, I don't think I can. And when you look at the facts of why was I arrested on 6 separate occasions for things I did not do, and if I'm able to answer it, is because I am right. And the attempt to silence me, gag me, threaten me with arrest, incarcerate me illegally, bully me, hurt me, rob me, destroy my life, all while hurting my children, was designed for me to somehow break and go crazy, break a restraining order, film content that I'm not allowed to film, make myself look insane. But in reality, what it did was give me a chance to see just how wrong the people that are misjudging me are. And this disclaimer should put an end to any speculation of anyone whatsoever who might misunderstand the content or the context of what I'm filming about. If I mention my wife or ex-wife, if I mention my children, that is because I am a loving human being who has spent his whole life doing nothing but being with one woman. And no, I mean, I was with other people before, and I mean, we met when we were kids in college, so give me a break, but I'm not a bad guy. And the notion that I am some sort of a villain and I'm going to be sitting here silently is impossible to really, really digest, because I have a right to stand up for myself. I have a right to stand up to these bogus allegations without the threat of and the fear of being thrown into jail, because this disclaimer allows everyone to understand that at no time is this a direct or indirect communication. As a matter of fact, anyone who has ever used this channel in order to throw me in jail or have me arrested only proves that you are stalking me illegally, because I have a restraining order against certain individuals. And those individuals, if they documented being a victim of some sort of cyber harassment by public dissemination, that is because they are stalking me and they violated a TRO first and documented this fully. This was not an easy set of circumstances to achieve, so please give me a break. I am not interested in violating the terms of both my release, as well as the fact that I have an amazing case via habeas corpus, as well as several other tort claims and things that I've learned from my experiences, my limited experience. And am I one of the most prolific pro se litigants in the history of the United States? Fuck yeah. But have I ever filed a single frivolous motion or letter to a court? No. And I never will, because I am not interested in soiling a reputation that is built on some of the most flawless entries and growth progresses of a pro se litigant. I started out in a small fashion in bankruptcy on 3/1/23. Over the last 3 years, I've grown into a formidable force in the courtroom, because that is where I have to adjudicate my matters, because I'm not able to have the people that I'm going against recognize basic communications and diplomacy as an avenue of resolution of the conflict. Everybody wants to see me in court. Nobody wants to resolve conflicts, no matter what I do, no matter how hard I try. So this disclaimer eliminates any ability for anyone to ever misunderstand anything that I'm saying. Ladies and gentlemen, if there is an issue or a court order that prevents you or I from communicating, then please understand that nothing in this channel, nothing in this, any of the videos before, prior to, during, after, is designed to have any indirect or direct communications. There is no possible way for a human being to say this any further without sounding completely insane and redundant. But please, if you had spent 7 days in absolute hell, which is to me Essex County Jail, for the 4th time, you too would err on the side of caution and go above and beyond the call of duty to make sure that the message is clear, it is concise, it is direct, and it is designed for not the people that think that it is designed for them. It is a warning message to not watch any of the content. Not to watch, but to not watch. I'm not really sure what other YouTube personas are asking people not to watch their content, but I guess I'm one of the first people, and I'm very proud to do this, because there needs to be a clear line that is drawn where there is plausible acceptability of responsibilities, and then there's just sheer and utter insanity where I am the victim of an endless stream of accusations that is virtually impossible to prove or disprove, but yet I have to suffer the consequences. I hope that I've been extremely clear in my message, and I hope that one day when my children are grown, they see the effort that Dad had to put forth in order to resolve his conflicts, or be able to go into a courtroom with clear consciousness and not be accused of frivolous litigation because of his attempts to endlessly resolve the conflicts outside of the said courthouse. My name is Daniel M. Reeses. Please understand that this disclaimer will constantly be a reminder of everything I'm trying to say. So even if the court orders are lifted or not lifted, I have no interest in hurting anyone whatsoever. If for some reason there is some inadvertent content that is posted that you find offensive, please just simply email myself directly and I will gladly review the email and review your complaint. I am not interested in hurting anyone. I will say it again, I'm not interested in hurting anyone. I will say it again, I'm not interested in hurting anyone. But if you find yourself a victim of circumstances where you're going to be extremely embarrassed and hurt by the truth that comes out, well, then I am very, very sorry that you chose option 2. Because I very clearly expressed my desire to amicably resolve my conflicts. And when I gave every human being 2 options, some of you wisely chose option 1, and unfortunately, some of you chose option 2.